So we will be starting our hearing on Senate Bill 479, transferring teachers from the KPERS 3 cash balance plan to the KPERS 2 plan and defining teachers for the purposes of KPERS. So we will start off with an overview on the bill, and we've got David Weiss. Thank you, David, for being here with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good afternoon. Senate Bill 479 provides that any teacher who is first employed by a KPERS participating employer on or after July 1 of 2024 would become a member of the system pursuant to the provisions of the Kansas Public Employees Retirement System Act of 2009. That's KPERS 2 or KPERS Tier 2 might be called. The bill also transfers on January 1 of 2025 all active and inactive teacher members in the KPERS 3 Act to the KPERS 2 group of members. And then the bill also then defines teacher as any professional employee who's required to hold a certificate to teach in a school district, and any teacher or instructor in a technical college, community college, or the Institute of Technology at Washington University. And then the Section 2 of the bill amends the KSA 74-49-301, and that just specifically exempts the teachers from the KPERS 3 Act. So on that going forward basis, they would not be KPERS 3 members, they'd be in that KPERS 2. And I can stay for any questions.
Committee, what questions do you have about this? Seeing none, thank you so much. We are going to start off with proponent testimony because we have Representative Robin Essex here from District 78, and she has a House Committee meeting to get to as soon as she's done with her testimony. So we're going to kind of move the order around, and we'll start with her proponent testimony. Thank you so much for joining us today in Senate Education.
Thank you. Am I on? Is the mic on? Okay. Well, Chairman Baumgardner, Vice Chairman Erickson, Ranking Minority Member Sykes, and esteemed members of the Senate Education Committee, thank you so much for inviting me to speak today in support of SB 479, a bill that I also introduced on the House side. I am just going to share with you my reason for being so passionate about this bill. I'm representing 2 districts in Johnson County. My husband has been a public educator for 34 years in Blue Valley, and we have many friends and family in the profession, and my kids attended Olathe Public Schools, so I'm very inundated with that community. And I will share with you, this legislation is aimed at addressing the urgent challenges surrounding teacher recruitment and retention in Kansas. It's a problem. Our tenured and talented teachers that are currently in KPERS 3 are heading out of state or even leaving the profession altogether for better pay and retirement benefits. The 5% pay increase that we passed last session did not include teachers. And as many of you already know, their salaries are negotiated within their districts. And I speak from experience when I say many teachers saw no increase at all as the rising cost of health insurance outweighed any of the pay raise they received. So just to give you a few personal examples, just 2 days ago, I got a text from an elementary school teacher saying she had turned in her resignation because, quote, it just isn't worth it anymore. And I've talked to 3 other teachers over the past 2 weeks, 1 in Olathe, 2 in Blue Valley, and they've expressed they're getting out. And it's not because they're ready to retire. They have to find another full-time job. But with the demands and with the benefits and all the things that they're facing right now as teachers, they're done. So these are amazing teachers that I want to share with you who have made a difference in their kids' lives. Popular teachers who are there for what I would say is the right reasons. Quality teachers means a quality education for our children. And I firmly believe that SB 479 will be a huge step towards addressing the pressing issue of teacher shortages, especially in Johnson County and across our state. So with hundreds of teaching positions remaining unfilled, we've got to take action. The teacher shortage poses significant concerns for our students' education and overall well-being that can result in less special education teachers, larger class sizes, fewer class options, and teachers filling in outside their expertise. As highlighted in the recent post-audit, I hope you all had a chance to take a look at that. KPERS 3, in summary, based on our state audit, offers lower benefits, longer retirement requirements, a longer vesting period, shared financial risk, and has higher employee contribution rates compared to other regional plans. This disparity is particularly troubling for dedicated career educators who have dedicated their lives to shaping the future of our children, but are shortchanged the most under this KPERS 3 plan. I will share a recent study by Bellwether Education Partners ranked Kansas 41st out of 50 states in teacher retirement for long-term or career teachers, while Missouri's public school retirement system was ranked 9th. This stark contrast underscores the urgent need for reform, especially for a border county like Johnson County. So by transitioning educators from KPERS 3 back into KPERS 2, Kansans can demonstrate a commitment to our kids, our schools, and provide teachers with the retirement benefits they deserve. And hopefully we can hold on to these good teachers who have already invested time in our districts. This will not only attract new educators, but also retain experienced professionals who are essential to maintaining the quality of education in our state. I urge this committee to consider reforms to KPERS 3 as a decisive step towards addressing teacher shortages in our state. The future of our children depend on it. Thanks so much for your attention on this critical matter.
Thank you very much. And since you're about to leave committee, do you have any questions for Representative S? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Estes, thank you for being here. So I noticed in your testimony you said, I urge the committee to consider reforms to KPERS 3. So do you have, is there something other than this bill?
No, reforms as in, I'd love to see it gone. Not just for teachers.
Gotcha.
Actually, I'd love to see it gone in general. But the reason that I'm focused on teachers is because I think there's a problem with retention. And those new hires that come in don't always realize what their retirement looks like compared to our surrounding communities, and they don't stay long. So we're losing valuable teachers. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for being here. Since you live along the state line of Missouri, what's the Missouri retirement pension look like for Missouri teachers?
Well, I'll tell you, they did outline some of that in the post-audit that our state did. Have you guys addressed the post-audit, Chair Baumgartner?
We have not had that hearing here. We
Okay.
know that post-audit had the hearing, and I believe FI&I had a hearing on it, but we did not have it here.
Okay. Okay, well, I know that they're looking a lot better than we are. I don't have the specifics of their retirement plan, but as I mentioned in my testimony, the Bellwether Education Partners ranked them 9th in teacher retirement long-term, and we were 41st out of 50 states, So
you don't know if it's like a defined benefit program or if it's more like a 401k system with a guaranteed return?
I don't know specifics on the Missouri side. I do know that it models more of our KPERS 1, KPERS 2 plans.
I bet our next individual that will testify might be able to shed some light. What I do know, and we've had this conversation before, we have individuals that have applied for positions, border counties, as well as Missouri, and Missouri districts show the comparison, and that tends to cause us to lose applicants. Yes, Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. I think when our next presenter comes up, I believe he could answer this question. In Missouri, I do not believe that if you're in the public retirement system as a teacher, you pay Social Security. So that also makes a difference in comparing apples to apples. But thank you.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative. So I know you've compared the retirement system to Missouri. Do you know what the average salary for a teacher is in Missouri?
No, I don't. I will say when my husband was a new teacher, he was exploring options in all the districts and even across the border. And he did end up in Blue Valley, first of all, because there were openings there. But I also believe because it was, at the time, one of the best options. But I cannot speak specifically to salary comparisons.
Hopefully, when KNEA comes up, maybe they could address that issue.
Thank
Follow
you.
up?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Did you have a follow-up? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any additional questions? Thank you so much. Go off to your next meeting.
Thank you so much.
So at this point, we will call up for informational briefing Alan Conroy. Now, Alan, we want to hear what you have to say, but I also want to caution you that I have 9 other people that want to speak after you. So
Thank you. I appreciate
We'll work our way through this. How about that?
That's right. I'll go right through it, and of course, questions at the appropriate time, and you've got my testimony. But just At a high level, of course, there's 3 retirement systems within KPERS, KPERS 1 and KPERS 2, depending on the year of when they joined. KPERS 1 before 2009, KPERS 2 between 2009 and 2014, and then KPERS 3 starts in 2015. KPERS 1 and 2 are the traditional defined benefit plan, so final average salary times years of service times a multiplier, and we can figure exactly what the lifetime benefit. KPERS 3 was created in 2012, didn't go into effect in 2015, but it's a cash balance plan. It's a hybrid plan. It looks certain attributes of like a 401k. There's employee risk sharing. You know, the old defined benefit plan 1 and 2, the employer has all of the risk. If investments are down, they have to make it up. On KPERS 3, that risk is shared with the employees. Even though I make the comparison to a 401k, KPERS 3 certainly has 3, I think, attributes of strength in that. One, it's a guaranteed life, it's unlike a 401k, and when a person gets ready to retire, sort of whatever's there is there for their retirement, the market's up or down. KPERS 3 account, it's a guaranteed lifetime benefit. They never lose what they put into it, and they're guaranteed at a minimum 4% interest on their contributions. So those are, I think, are attributes to KPERS 3 as compared to just a 401k. This bill then would carve out just teachers out of that KPERS 3 group, and as you may have seen or know, that's the definition as by the State Board of Ed, or the numbers we looked at. A teacher had to be in the title of the group, in the certified position that the member is in, and we counted them as a teacher. Certainly there's a cost if you roll those people from KPERS 3 back to KPERS 2. Part of it is the unfunded actuarial liability. And maybe before I get that on page 2 of my testimony is just a comparison, and you can do lots of different assumptions, but a KPERS 2 member who has 30 years in, retires at age 60, their annual benefit then would be about $45,000 a year. KPERS 3, if they only got the 4%, it'd be about $27,000, about $18,000 difference. KPERS 3, and if KPERS 3 members can receive some of if the markets does well, the trust fund does well, they can get some additional dividends, and that would narrow that difference to about $8,000 less than a 2 in this example. And there's lots of other examples. There's replacement ratios there, and KPERS 3 is very sensitive to when the member joins, how long we have the money to invest that's eventually annuitized in their ultimate retirement benefit. But generally, KPERS 3 benefits are going to be less than KPERS 2, and that's by plan design. 2012, when it was created, there were certainly challenges in the funding area of KPERS, a low funded ratio, and so these were one of the things that the policymakers at the time did to help improve the overall funding position of the trust fund. Cost on this bill, in terms of it's kind of separated between the unfunded liability, so that's the cost for grant going back from 2015 forward. What is the cost since we haven't been able, haven't received contributions on that? It's about $134 million is the one-time cost. That can be divided, paid over 20 years, and be about $11 million a year. So that's addressing the unfunded liability by bringing over, again, just our estimates, and there might be better ones on those teachers, but we were thinking there's about 35,000, between 35 and 40,000 that would be impacted by this bill. So unfunded liability, $134 million. You can pay $11 million a year for 20 years. The normal cost then is what's the cost for this point going forward for current active people, and it would be about $14 million a year going forward from there. So altogether, if you pay it as you go, it's about $25 million. And of course, the state pays the Capers School employer contribution as part of state aid to education. There's some administrative costs there, what I won't go into, but most of that's for either IT changes or some temporary staffing to help people make that transition. And there's a little comment about timing, but I think that can be addressed at a later time.
So committee, what questions do you have for Alan? We'll start with Senator Petty.
Thank you. And Alan, thanks for being here. So just so I'm sure, make sure, so if this would ever pass, and we want to do a one-time influx from state general fund, it'll be 134 million or 11 million for 20 years plus 14.2 additional costs, because those people will now be under tier 2.
Exactly right. That's correct.
Thank you.
Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You spoke a little bit to this, but why did it ever change? So I just know I came under Capers 3, which people are like, it's not, Capers used to be this like golden thing, but I'm afraid, my generation and younger will never know what a pension is. We'll never see that. It's just a reality. So why did it change?
Right. I think at the time, it was an attempt by the policymakers to improve the funded status of the trust fund, the funded ratio, assets liability. We were about 56% funded, and you really want to be 100% funded. Since that time, we're about 73% funded, so we're headed the right direction. But the policymakers wanted a less expensive plan design for the employer, which is this hybrid plan, and that's part of it. And then also in terms of the improved funded ratio, policymakers, including this legislature, has been paying exactly what's actuarially required for that state school. There were 25 years where the policymakers at the time, our actuary would say you need to contribute this, and they'd say, thank you, we're going to contribute at this lower level. Difference didn't go away, it just rolled to that unfunded liability. So, and then a couple, of course, horrific investment things, 2001.com and housing and all that, and so there were some big things. So the spiral kind of started down, was concerned about the future of the trust fund, and so they made these plan design changes to help address the long-term funding position of the system.
Did you have a follow-up or, okay? So we're going to go to Senator Dietrich and then Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Ellen, thank you. You're always full of a lot of numbers, So I heard you, I wrote down 35 to 40,000 teachers are in Tier 3 now. Is that correct?
That's
Capers 3?
Capers 3. There's about 85,000 total Capers school members. And I think, Jared, it's
Do you have a chart?
15,000 are in Capers 3. So there's two things going on. How many are in Capers 3? And there's about 15,000 out of that 35 to 40,000. And this also would address teachers in, like, for example, community colleges, technical schools, that we didn't have access to that number.
Anyone who has teacher in their title. That's
You
one
have a follow-up?
So my question is, Capers is a very large organization, and in Tier 3, you don't just have school people, you have state employees. So what is that total group, the number of the total group in Tier 3?
Jared's looking.
I keep saying
Yeah,
Tier 3, but you know what I mean,
Yeah,
Capers 3.
Capers 3, that's right, and that would include those local, state, and then all the school personnel, and we've got it. Pouring through our actuarial report.
And the reason I'm asking is because, this is a carve out of a particular population. So who's left, I guess is my question.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Or
65,000 active. Yeah, 65,000 active then.
So 60,000
And I'm sorry,
in
yeah.
Capers 3, 15,000 in this population.
That's right,
that this
that's
bill
right.
addresses.
And Capers 3 is the largest active group right now in regular capers.
Okay, so now we have Senator Blasey, followed by Senator Gossage. Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're scheduled to be fully funded in 2039 on the current, if we continue to make the payments we're required statutorily, correct?
That's correct. And 7% on the market.
And 7% on the market. Let's hope the stock market keeps going like it's been doing. And then this bill, though, will have no effect on that timeline. Is that correct? If we make that one-time payment or the payments over 20 years?
That's correct.
Senator Gossage.
Good to see you again, Alan. Since I serve in FI&I, we see you rather frequently talking about capers there, and as early as at 9:30 this morning. Could you address what we talked about at 9:30, which was the $9.6 billion of unfunded liability?
That's right. So that'd be the total unfunded actuarial liability for the entire system, state, school, local, to get you to that full 100% funding, that goal. What is that lug that hasn't been paid, that needs to be paid off by 2039, as the senator mentioned? And so it's, right at $9.6 billion is the total unfunded actuarial liability for the system. And again, that's state, local, school, judges, KP&F, police and fire, and so forth. That's everything. State school is about $6.3 billion with a B.
So this morning we heard about another group that was asking to have additional funding, and I'm going along the lines of what Senator Dietrich said. I think the concern is, and it was brought up this morning, well, what about when teachers come and say, we want more, which is happening in the same day? It's not as simple as just us. So could you address that? What would the note be if we had the other 35,000 teacher staff? So teachers, 15,000, 35,000.
Right. I think, I know Mr. Graham may have this information too, but I think for all Capers school members, that $130 million roughly would be about $250 million to move all school Capers 3 members back to Capers 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Alan. I missed those FI&I days. Just to clarify, so currently in Capers 3, there are 65,000 active. Of those, 35 to 45 are school people, and then the 15K for teachers.
Correct.
Okay. My follow-up question, and kind of going on based on your committee this morning, so I believe corrections have always been Capers 2, and even if they start employment tomorrow, they would be in Capers 2. What are the other groups that would go into Capers 2 or possibly, but not Capers 3?
Right, and you called out, you're exactly right, and that is the only exception. When Capers 2 was created, the decision was made because of the need for correctional officers and their job demands that they should remain in Capers 2, and they're the only group that's still in Capers 2. Everybody else, if they join state, school, local, they go into Capers 3.
Committee, any other questions? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Alan. I don't know if we'd have data on this yet, but I assume that this public retirement system was originally created to help create that commitment to the job and retention. So do we have any data that shows that Capers 2 showed less retention as far as a whole career than Capers 1? And what is that data looking like now for Capers 3?
Great question. I think we have that, and how about if we can sort of dig that out of the actuarial tables and provide that to you. I do just make a comment. It's amazing how many, tens of thousands of public employees that start new into Capers, and so some of them, of course, retire, some of them may be leaving to pursue another career, but just the number of new employees that are starting with local school and the state, it's a surprising number. I think it's in the tens of thousands. So.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm not seeing any additional questions, but you're going to hang around, right? Wonderful. Okay, so I have 3 proponent testimonies. Is Mary Sinclair, is she signed in with us? Is she? Okay, so let's go ahead and go with that. Let's start with Mary Sinclair. And we're going to try and, if we can kind of limit each person to 2 minutes, that would be great so that we can get through everyone. So, Mary, could you go ahead and start?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I am not able to turn my video on. Can you hear me okay, though?
We
I'm
can
not
hear
sure
you
why.
great. Yep,
Okay.
it's great.
Okay, so I'll be super brief. The Kansas PTA is in support of strengthening CAPERS options for any of our educators. Our teachers are a critical need there to shift them into CAPERS 2 if that is feasible and an option. Just looking at efforts, we really see this as part of a comprehensive approach towards recruitment and retention of teachers. And I think there have been some other steps that the legislature has made that has really helped with recruitment in terms of the commitment to the Gannon funding agreement and consideration potentially of fully funding special education. But this CAPERS conversation really is the piece that could help with retention. And one of the connections I think that I just wanted to point out was one in the Emporia State University initiative, that survey data. They talk about how um, one of the strongest predictors of teacher retention is our principals. I think it was like, 4 of those predictors were leaning back to the strength of building principles, and those building principles come from our retained teachers. I think just that whole connection there is super powerful, and the creating that incentive for our new generation of educators to stay would be well served by a review of our CAPERS program. And I think there's also really strong cost savings data there. I think the estimate for teacher turnover in Kansas was nearly $40 million in 2022. And the cost of a departing teacher is estimated to be 150% of their salary. So I think there's some clear financial reasons to consider as well. So we support any efforts to strengthen the CAPERS program. And again, thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Kansas PTA.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Leah Flitter, Assistant Executive Director for Advocacy and Governmental Relations for the Kansas Association of School Boards. Welcome back to the committee, Leah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I'll be very brief. Our members have told us they have a strong interest in moving teachers from Tier 3 to Tier 2. They felt like the improved retirement benefit, not only, of course, is a financial advantage for our teachers, but that it also demonstrates respect for the profession. So in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that and stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Okay. You may just stand there because those are our 2 proponent, virtual and in-person. The others are written. So committee, what questions do you have for the proponents? Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess it's a comment for us to ponder because I'm not sure if there's a specific person that has the answer, but as we're thinking about attraction and retention of teachers, I have to ask myself with with these generations, what are the primary drivers of what they want in a job? Quick Gallup research, what are millennials seeking? They're not always after that, like where's that job that has the pension or the long-term retirement? And so I think we need to look at some, in my opinion, you can hit a bigger nail on the head if you look at some of the other things that they're really looking for in a job and trying to create those to be attractive. Obviously, any kind of good retirement is always an attractor and a retainer, but I don't know that it's the top thing on most teachers' minds or most employees' minds.
So did you want a response on that? Or was that just a statement? Okay. Did you want to respond to that?
I would say that makes sense, Senator O'Shea. I have a 30-year-old who gets CAPERS and has like almost no idea of what his benefit is right now because, who knows, if he'll ever use it, or he feels like that's way far. So, and I know many people who are younger than me, I do hear that retirement is kind of that's not something that they think about when they are looking at a job. They're looking at the culture and those types of things. So I would say for some of the mid to later career teachers, this would probably definitely be a benefit for them, no pun intended.
Senator Blasey and then Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just curious if the members have had any discussions about, there's a lot of conversation in this building about even going to a 401k type of plan, making it maybe a generous contribution by the employer. Because I think the goal of KPERS 3, is my understanding, was it allows flexibility for younger people who are more transient and wanting to transfer in and out. And so I didn't know if there's been any conversations with your members about whether or not, as the legislature continues to even have that discussion, if that would be something that younger teachers or the school members had that conversation.
I have not heard that from our member senator, but I anticipate that would be something that we would want to bring up. We go around the state every summer and fall to regional meetings. In fact, I believe you've been to some of them. Some of you have as well. And we always ask, okay, what are your concerns? And I'll make a note, and that's something that we can bring up in our next round of meetings.
Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this question actually might be better answered by Alan Conroy again, but currently teachers are not allowed to opt out of KPERS 3, new teachers joining today, correct?
Please, if you would just go ahead to the microphone. Let's make sure that we get this answered.
Yes, that's correct. It's not optional. If they're employed by a public employer that's affiliated, they have to belong to KPERS.
So would the whole system collapse if we allowed them to opt out?
No, but again, you're back to that unfunded actuarial liability. And again, collectively, you as policymakers, that's your debt. And so if there's less contributions coming in, that employer contribution rate would increase. So the state, ultimately, employers have to pay for it now or later. So.
All right, committee, we are going to move to our neutral testimony. First up, we have virtual testimony from Sheriff Jeff Easter of Sedgwick County. Sheriff, you've got 2 minutes. Let's hear your neutral testimony.
Hello?
Hello, we hear you.
Okay. Doesn't look like my video is working, so I apologize. Good afternoon. I'm Sheriff Jeff Easter. I represent KSA, KPOA, and Kansas Association of Police, and I appreciate the opportunity. A couple things here. When this was talked about in, I believe, 2012, originally the associations were told they were just looking at teachers, putting on Tier 3 or KPERS 3. It then turned into everybody that's employed by the state, local municipalities that are not KPNF. I'll be honest with you. Several of us have done all the adding of it. Basically, we can hire kids at 18. By KPERS 3, they can't retire until they're 65 at 37% of their paycheck. We will never have anybody retire. And at the end of the day, all of us were put in this together, and we're simply asking that if you make a change to KPERS 3 with the teachers, that you also include all the other employees that were swept up in this in the beginning in 2012. And so we are very supportive of going back to KPERS 2 because we are faced with critical staff shortages in many of our county jails and dispatch centers. This is due not only to recruitment challenges, but also challenges in retention for positions that require 24/7 coverage. So some of the same things that you've heard from the proponents, we are experiencing as well. And we know in KPERS 2, we have a lot more people that are sticking around because they have a lot better retirement in their future compared to KPERS 3. And so with that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service to Sedgwick County. Next up, we have Sarah LaFrenz, President of Kansas Organization of State Employees. Welcome to committee.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. My name is, and Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Ranking Minority Member, and members of the committee. Thank you for having me here. You've heard a large amount of testimony here, and I will not read to you mine, which is very, very similar. We completely agree that Tier 3 needs those changes. We echo what you see many people saying here today, including Sheriff Easter, who just spoke. Our facilities, like correctional facilities, mental health facilities, are facing severe staffing shortages. We've had 4 in the last 3 weeks episodes of violence and unrest in our correctional facilities, which had injuries upon our staff that were significant and caused hospitalization. We're looking at the same types of things here that other people are coming to and talking about. We really want to make sure that we talk about how this is a really great idea. We absolutely agree that Tier 3 needs changes. We're just concerned about perhaps leaving folks out that are also facing severe staffing shortages, unrest, and danger in their work. I will not read the rest of this to you in order to be very respectful of the committee's time, and I am happy to answer questions if you have anything. Thank you.
We will get to that when we finish.
Sure. Thank
all
you
of our
very
neutral.
much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ernie Claudel, member of the Capers Board of Trustees. Ernie, welcome to committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to take a few minutes here. First, I have to do my disclaimer. I do not represent, I am a member, elected member of the Capers Board of Directors, but I do not represent or speak for them. My primary focus is with the Kansas Coalition of Public Retirees and the Kansas Association of Retired School Personnel. We would obviously support this in totality if everybody was being moved. One of the things that hasn't been talked about that I've heard about the building that I think is very important, if under Tier 3 there's a good case scenario and a bad case scenario, because of the options that are in the program as far as how much money is contributed by the employer. So the worst case scenario could be as low as 28%. Most of us who retire from Capers 1 or 2 are now 51 or 52%, I'm sorry, a final average salary, okay? Great discrepancy. So one of the things I've heard recently around here is that if the federal government does not fix Social Security, and if this is not repaired, then the public servants of the state of Kansas will have a really problem. And there is no question about certainly the retention, and I believe and that was in the report from the post-audit committee, but also I've done some research on this, and it also is an incentive to hire public employees. Very, very high consideration, over 90% in public servants, teachers, firefighters, and police officers. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Timothy Graham, Director of Government Relations and Legislative Affairs. Welcome back to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now, your testimony is 4 pages long, but you're just going to talk to us, right?
Yes, and I'm not an overachiever, so.
Okay.
So anyways, all right. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. There are 2 issues, and I will read this part because I think it's important. There are 2 issues that are directly related to Senate Bill 479 that seem to have pretty widespread agreement amongst this body. And one of those is that teacher shortages in Kansas are real. And the other is that Capers Tier 3 is inadequate retirement option for public service in Kansas. I've had that discussion with several people with a wide variety of political stripes, and it seems like they all agree on this. And it's inadequate for reasons that were that were articulated very well just a few minutes ago, so I won't go into those. Senate Bill 479 would be the step in the right direction to address both of those issues. The Kansas NEA supports moving teachers, as defined in the bill, from Capers Tier 3 to Capers Tier 2. So why are we neutral? Kansas NEA believes that no teacher in Kansas can do their job to the fullest without the assistance of educational support professionals, school counselors, librarians, school nurses, and a whole host of partners that are essential to the public education system. For that reason, we are testifying in neutral with the hope and the ask that the committee will make the appropriate amendments to Senate Bill 479 to include these essential partners. And as Alan said earlier, I did email him over the weekend and just got a base understanding of what that increased fiscal note was. We talked right before the hearing, so I haven't even had a chance to talk to the members of the committee. You will see in my testimony below that we do admit that Tier 3 reform alone will not solve the teacher shortage crisis by itself. And we also admit that it seems hard to assess what impact it will have on mitigating the crisis in part. However, we strongly believe that a competitive retirement plan can be a tool in that recruitment toolbox, and without the existence of the tool, measuring its efficacy of such a recruitment strategy is unrealistic. Is that my timer? Wow, that's a fast 2 minutes. Let me close, if I may.
You may.
Okay. I want to thank the committee for taking this issue up. As I said before, I've had several discussions with politicians and elected officials in this body of many political stripes on this issue. And the message that I received was that 2024 would be the year for Tier 3 reform. I've told our members on dozens of occasions that I believed that there was real momentum to fix this and that we had something to look forward to this year. I have to say it's a little disappointing that we're in the second half of the session and this is the first hearing we've had. So again, I thank all of you for being the committee that was willing to take on this conversation. This is an issue that will have real implications, positive impact on teachers and the families of teachers and the offspring of teachers and everybody else that are affected by the public education system. So we appreciate that you have taken the time to do this. We hope that this discussion will not stall now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last up, we have Jerry Henn, Assistant Executive Director of USA, Kansas, and Kansas School Superintendents Association. Welcome back to committee, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Senator Baumgardner and committee members. I appreciate this opportunity to be in front of you today to talk a little bit about KPERS 3, KPERS 2, KPERS in general. I'm not going to reiterate all the other things that everybody said, because that's basically the same things that I have in my testimony. But what I do want to say are two little things and then a couple of stories, and that's about it. This is one of our legislative priorities, is to get rid of Tier 3, as Representative X has talked about. Just get rid of it. That is part of our legislative priorities. So that would be one thing that I would tell you, that we're all in favor of that. See, and that was 2 in 1. You didn't even realize it. So now we go on to the story time. When I became an administrator, I quickly learned that when I started talking to people in my schools, I started out as talking to teachers. I quickly learned that that was not the group that I always had to talk to. When I started later, like after 5 years of experience, I brought everybody in. Paras, cooks, custodians, you name it. Everybody came in to our meetings as we talked, because I learned very quickly that those are the people, everybody is a teacher to these kids. Bus drivers are the first people that they see, when kids see when they get on or come to school. That is a first teacher. Although they do not have that title, they become those types of people for us. And so that, to me, is part of the reasoning why we are neutral at this point, because it does not include all of those people. And the last story I have, I may have told you this, and if I do, please stop me. But as a superintendent in 2015, when this came about, I started talking to my 21-year-olds, and I'll finish it quickly. My 21-year-olds, I never thought I'd get 2 minutes. My 21-year-old teachers, I had to talk to them about retirement. What a deflating thing to do, talking to them about retirement, that you have to prepare for that. And so with that story, I will finish and stand for questions.
Well, would you tell the rest of the story? So when it went to Tier 3, Why was it that you had to talk to them about retirement?
It was because the retirement was not going to be there as if you were in tier 2. It was basically, I think, somebody made the comment that it was down to 23%, as low as 23%, as Ernie said, that as high as 52% for a tier 2, tier 3 person. And so understandably, we know that Social Security helps us in that process, but it also hurt our tier 3 people.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to start with Senator O'Shea. We've got Senator Dietrich and then Senator Blasey with questions. Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question's for Ernie, so if you want to start making your way up, I'll ask the question. I think you said at its worst, 28% for tier 3. What tier 3 at its best? Is there a range?
When the bill was originally written, I can remember this because the switch of numbers, it was 43%. Best case, worst case was 34. Now it's digressed to the 34% has now become 28.
Thank you.
So we really lost some ground there. Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here today. So Senator Petty and I are on the Joint Committee on Pensions, Investments, and Benefits, and I think I've been on that like forever. So the first recommendation on that joint committee, and of course, JG and Melissa and Alan Conroy would have been there as well, is that the committee recommends legislative leadership establish a joint committee. This is our very first recommendation that was unanimous to evaluate KPERS Tier 3. And the committee recommends the select committee review the performance of Tier 3, which we know is not probably as adequate as it should be. We hear that all the time, and determine whether that cash balance plan is fulfilling its intended purpose and make other recommendations as that select committee might see fit. So we've been talking about this for quite some time. It comes up every year in our joint committee, and it probably wouldn't hurt if this committee was willing to ask legislative leadership after the testimony we've heard today to look at Tier 3 and have that select committee do that. We don't know what the best answer is, but we'd probably do owe our state employees of every category that opportunity to have that Tier 3 really analyzed. So that would just be a statement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't serve on pensions, but I do like numbers. Alan, you said 134 million for all teachers, 250 million for all school personnel. What is the number for all employees that we have heard from today that they would like to see all employees, state employees, go in?
It'd be close to 300 million.
300 million state, local, and teachers. Okay. And then my next question is for Mr. Grammer, the Organization for State Employees. My question that I asked the School Board Association earlier, have your members had any conversations about moving to a 401k style, or the state would make a contribution and we'd let it go with the market? I mean, as we've known in the last 4 years, the market's had tremendous growth. I mean, 12, 14%. So I'm curious if your membership have thoughts on that type of model.
Well, I get it.
KNEA supports a defined benefit plan. At the end of the day, we don't want our teachers to have to take on the ups and downs of the stock market and take on that that risk, if you will, particularly at the end of their career. So we support KPERS as it is. Plus, I feel like I've heard in testimony before that would be a huge, that would be a big fiscal note to transition the whole KPERS system from one to the other. Now, as an option on top of KPERS, we support any type of additional options, and I believe that those options, there's a KPERS, what is it, a 459? Is that 457? See, I guess I can't come to work for you. So anyways, so we would support that in addition to the base KPERS system.
Well, he used a lot more words than I would, but which I can greatly appreciate. So we do have those conversations with our workers. And for state employees, we have folks that are coming straight out of school, that are in their early 20s, to people that may have switched a career in their mid to late 30s or 40s or are going to do something. What we overarchingly saw, like, when I first came into this in 2018, people were like, oh, well, you know, I mean, a 401k should be fine. But as the time has gone by, even the younger folks are just like, no, we would really prefer to have a defined pension and a defined benefit. I think because of some of the things you've heard today with like how the performance of Tier 3 has been. And so we do have those conversations with them. And when we talk about like generational differences, and I don't have any children that are quite old enough to be working on their own at this point, but some of like the younger family members that are in their early 20s and things have a lot of concerns about those pieces too. So I do think you're seeing like some of these folks in a generational sort of status learn more about what that looks like and how it affects them. So does that kind of help to answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Did you have a follow-up?
Oh. Tim, come back.
Well, really, it's probably more for than Alan. I'm just curious with the numbers. You know, he said it transitioning it to a 401k. How is that there a big cost jump to that? Because I thought if you're going forward, if the state's going to make a 6% contribution match and they make 6%, I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead, Senator. Thank you. It gets you back to who's going to pay for that unfunded actuarial liability. And so you could set up a 401k and whatever the match would be, 5 or 6%, but then that's going to be on top of that legacy unfunded actuarial liability payment, that $6.3 billion for the state, $9+ billion for all employers. So.
Right, which is kind of like if we stop Social Security today for young people, you have that issue with the backfilling. I understand. Okay, I appreciate the feedback and response.
And so before you walk away, just a point of clarification, because I know that when Sarah was up earlier, she was talking about some of the incidents that had occurred with correctionals. But clarify, correctional employees already had the carve out to remain in Tier 2. Is that correct?
That is correct. They remain and are still in CAPERS 2. Correctional officers, and then there's a group of employees that have daily and continuous contact with inmates. So might be food service, might be correctional industries. Those kinds of people are also in that group. A little different plan design, but part of CAPERS 2.
Okay, so before you walk away, because we're running out of time, I'm sorry, just real quickly, let's come up with the grocery list of the data that we had requested. So we want to, you've talked about the 130 million, the 250 million, and 300 million. So can you, again, give us what those groups of folks are and where that is? And also the request, I believe it was from Senator Straub, was with regard to, okay, how long did people that started in Tier 1 stay in Tier 1 before retirement? That was a little bit different because retirement was set with the number of 85, which we lost that carrot, if you will, with Tier 2 and 3. We got rid of any type of a goal. But then can you get us the data for Tier 2, how long they have stayed in, what that dropout rate is, and Tier 3? I think that would be helpful. Committee, what other information do we want to receive as far as data? And the reason I ask that is I appreciate that the senator brought up the joint committee, but Tier 3 has been around since 2015, and there have been concerns for several years. So it's time for us to get serious. Are we just going to continue to hear the concerns and do nothing, or are we going to move forward? And so I guess that third request is let's make sure that everyone on the committee has legislative post-audit report. So I have real quickly Senator Sykes, then Senator Petty. Did it get clarified? Okay. Did you have a question?
I was just going to suggest that you just mentioned about, yes, we keep talking about it. I mean, as the Senator Dietrich said, but maybe another piece that Alan could share is how much it increases in costs if we, every year we put off, even though we keep talking about it, we put off making any kind of change from Tier 3 to Tier 2.
Agreed. That would be, if you could get us that background information. Committee, good work today. Great questions. We appreciate the testimony, and we really do appreciate the interest and the appreciation that you have expressed for us having this hearing. It was important to have this hearing today.